Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Frederick County Executive Jan Gardner, and today my guest is Ray Barnes. And Ray is a familiar face with our school system. He's been the Executive Director of Facility Services Division for a number of years, and he recently became the Chief Operating Officer for Frederick County Public Schools. So why don't you start off, Ray, telling us a little bit about your new position?
Well, my new position has me in charge of the things that I was in charge of before. So we do long-range planning for schools, and we do school construction and design, maintenance and operations services. My new position, though, also includes bus transportation for students.
That's a big job.
It's a big job. We have a terrific team, though. Also, security, emergency services, and our division also handles use of facilities, which is the community use of our buildings for various types of recreational and other opportunities.
Okay. Well, that's a lot. That should keep you busy and out of trouble most of the time.
That's keep me busy.
So, you know, I wanted to talk to you about and hope that you could share with our viewers a little bit about what's going on with school construction. I mean, we're very excited that Frederick High School, the new Frederick High School replacement project is under construction and moving forward. But we do know that the bids came in higher than the engineering estimates and the budget. And so we've had to add some money to that. And we know that we're projecting that all the school projects behind it are also going to have to, you know, are expected to come in at a higher cost. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, you know, why these schools are coming in at a higher price tag.
Well, there's several reasons that we've sort of identified as explanations for higher prices. Probably, we think one of the most direct reasons, but one that's harder to measure, are the market conditions within the construction industry right now. The country and this region are starting to come out of the recession. So a lot of the major projects, construction projects that had been shelved over the last 5 to 7 years are now starting to come forward. So that's created a little bit of competition for owners who are looking for contractors to do work. Contractors have more choices today, and so that's part of the explanation. We have fewer contractors, there's more work out there. I think that has added to the basic cost for not only schools, but for all sort of institutional projects that the county may want to undertake. Market conditions have changed, and they've changed pretty quickly from over the last couple of years from what they were at. So I think that's a big driver of the cost increases that we have now.
So is that fewer bidders? Is that part of it?
We do always get multiple bidders, but I think even with the multiple bidders, the contractors are all have multiple projects that they can choose from. You know, we are not the only builder or owner out there looking for contractors. So they can be a little bit more selective. That means their profit margins, which had been very tight during the recession, and in fact we saw some contraction within the construction industry as businesses didn't have enough work to do, so they went out of business. So we're starting to see a little bit more profit taking amongst the contracting community as they can be more selective about what projects they want to take on. And so we're in the middle of that. We're just one owner trying to move forward on a project in the midst of these larger economic transitions that are taking place.
Okay. Are there any new requirements on construction that are adding to the cost?
Well, the buildings that we build today are more complicated than they were in the past. Certainly there have been increased requirements associated with energy conservation. Now all our buildings have to meet these national standards for energy conservation. The HVAC or the mechanical system requirement codes have changed. So we have to design HVAC systems which introduce a lot more ventilation, fresh air into the classrooms, raises the cost. environmental change regulations, a lot of them connected with the Chesapeake Bay efforts to clean the bay, have gotten tighter. It's much more costly to build the new stormwater management systems than it used to be. And then, of course, there are other regulatory changes that have taken place, one of which has been the prevailing wage regulation, which the legislature made changes to in their 2014 session.
Okay. So I know in the county we've experienced the increased cost of the stormwater regulations. We've seen that on Boyers Mill Road. And just for people who are listening, we're required to build many stormwater features rather than what we used to do, which would be like a regional stormwater pond. So there's more cost with that, more land consumed to meet that requirement. Prevailing wage doesn't really apply to most county projects because we don't have state money in other county projects other than schools. And so what can you contribute to prevailing wage? That's really had a lot of the conversation out there. So why does that add cost? Because, you know, I know that it's more than just paying people a fair wage. There's other components that add to the cost.
Right. Prevailing wage is sort of a catch-all term which applies to a whole list of regulations that are administered by the State Department of Licensing and Labor and Regulation. So the prevailing wage, first and foremost, establishes the rate of pay that the different trades have to be paid by the contractors who are using their services. So there is the level of pay that is set by the state that the contractors need to provide. But beyond that, there are other requirements. There's a lot more reporting requirements on the part of the contractor. They have to submit monthly reports to the state which verify the wages that have been paid. They have to submit information about what type of trades they have on the job, and there are regulations which establish what types of trades within trades need to be present, and so forth and so on. So the regulations go beyond just setting the wage rate. It includes a lot of other overhead costs that the contractors need to provide. And for large contractors, that's something that they may have been used to doing in the past. But for smaller contractors, that may be a burden that's difficult for them to accomplish within the small staffs they may have to administer these projects.
Okay. Because, you know, a lot of people think it's just about, you know, wages, but it's also about number of people required on the job, supervision, and then all the paperwork requirements and the regulatory requirements. So those add a lot of costs. So do you think that there are some of the smaller contractors who may not bid on some of these projects because of the amount of paperwork and compliance requirements?
I think any job, especially a school job, has dozens and dozens of contractors who work on the various aspects of it. And some of the smaller contractors who today have choices about where to send their teams to work may decide that working under a prevailing wage system is more effort and requires more time on their parts than another project where there aren't these prevailing wages. And it might have nothing to do with the wages, but the reporting requirements and the overhead needed to just do the work may be something that they're not interested in doing, and they may select another project.
If they have other choices of work.
They have other choices, right. So that I'm sure is happening to a certain extent out there in the contracting community.
So what is the school system doing to try to value engineer projects to try to control costs? Because obviously we have to comply with all of the regulatory requirements that are out there. And there's a lot of debate about that politically, but what can we do for cost containment?
Well, we are looking at all of the aspects of the design of the building which do not diminish the goals and objectives of the building, which is to provide an academic setting for students to learn within. So we're going back and looking at all of our systems to determine whether we can reduce the scope of work needed to build them, maybe substitute some materials for more expensive ones, maybe look at different approaches to reducing the time it takes to build the building. But we have to be careful because schools are not built for 10 or 15 or 20 years. They're built to last, 50, 60 years at a minimum. And so we can't make too many compromises, otherwise that just ends up in adding costs down the road, which may be even more difficult than what they cost up front. So.
Now, just looking at the horizon of things out there, I know obviously the school systems across the state have experienced these cost increases that have happened over the last 6 months to a year. And do you have any sense of the state trying to put more money to school construction or trying to address this in some other way from the staff side?
Well, I do know that Governor Hogan has introduced or initiated a task force to look at state regulations. And so the outcome of that study may be some shifts or adjustments or changes to regulations as they affect school construction. We'll have to see what the outcome of that is. Dr. Lever, who is Executive Director of the Maryland Public School Construction Program, has also talked about looking at other approaches to school construction that may reduce costs. But I think these are more long-term types of evaluations, and it may be a while before they take effect. So we're looking at any adjustments we can right now, but it's in the context of a market where prices are going up, and that's unavoidable. So,
well, as the county executive, I want to keep all these schools on track because we know the schools that the school system are requesting are needed schools. Frederick High School's waited for many years for their project, and we have elementary schools in particular in the queue that are needed to address school overcrowding. And then, of course, we have our renovation projects as well. So controlling costs and trying to finance these schools is going to be a challenge over the next few years.
Absolutely.
I am looking for the state to help be part of that solution in terms of maybe providing a greater cost share, after the fact, because these overruns really have to be absorbed by the county government in their entirety, which reduces, at the end of the day, how much money the state is putting into these projects. So I know the state has their own issues with money, but it's going to be an ongoing debate over the next few years.
I'm sure for the counties, the costs have been a real blow. So we'll have to look at various different approaches to try to mitigate those costs, and the school system will work with the county and work with the state to try to figure out ways to do that.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me today. This is a hot topic, so I appreciate you being here and giving us the benefit of your years of experience and your knowledge. I really do think you're an expert and recognized as one in the state on the school construction front, so we're very fortunate to have you as part of the team. So thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for the invitation. Anytime.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Community Conversation. School construction is in the news, and we're working together to find solutions to keep our school projects that are greatly needed in our county on track and on time. Thank you for joining us.